start again from Siv Beis, just to clarify a few pratim. As I said, that's what I'm get this part of the Maamar that from Perek Yud Aleph, in order for there to be the Tzachna Melchamet, you menatzeach the Menaged. So the inyan of being menatzeach the Menaged, that's negea b'pnimius v'atzmius hamelech, and for that, that's tifer from alle andere inyanim. And for that, he's mevazviz is called itzreisav. The ikar was retzach da is that the melech is mevazviz is called itzreisav for the sake of the nitzuach hamacham. So the shadow is what does it mean in the nimshal? What's the darga of eitzer? So what's the question in the mashal? The mashal eitzer are azal chinyanim which are inyanim mechusim. In certain things that the melech has, the certain eitzers that he has, so they're there for the sake of use. So that shows that they're not a precious Indian that the tarikat is within this Indian itself. So you don't use it for something else. You don't use it as an imtzai for something else. Something that you use, the melech has eiches that he buys with the tzrachim of the Medina. That means that the tzrachim of the Medina are more important than this neches that he has. And he uses this neches as an imtzai for the tzrachim Medina. Then the Evan should be keser hamelo. So that's not there. That's a tayr zach in itself. That's a precious thing that the melech doesn't use it for the sake of something else. He's not going to use his keser, his evan should be keser melech in order to buy nechasim, because this is a precious thing. But aval became nishta zat tayr zach. What's the purpose of the evan should be keser melech in order for the yoker for the heid v'hadar amalchos to be nizgala, in order for people to be impressed by the gadol melech. Melech v'yofi techasei neinachos. So that itself shows that it's used. If it's used for a certain matara, that means that it's not the ultimate. That means that it's not azat tayr zach. It's tired, but the very fact that it's a zazach, which is used in order to express the Yeker HaMalchus, in order to express Adam Mechusim to the Am, so it's not the ultimate tired zach. In the eitzes which are mechusim, you don't show them. They're not there for any external purpose. They're the most precious things, and therefore it's not used for anything. They're zeizan tired zach. So what does it mean in the nimshal? That there's none of the lukus which are not l'shem gilei lukus, they're not l'shem to bring out Gadus Hashem to azulas. They're inyanim yikarim etzadas, and that's the whole arichas in so the eitzer is inyanim ne'elamim. Inyanim lukus sharanam shalamayim megilei. When order so haben a tifer avana, and what's the yoker of the was besteht tayirkeit in the inyanim hane'elamim. So the inyanim agluim also have a certain yoker. They're also inyanim nefloimaid, and they're also not stam inyanim which are called inyanim in tzay b'shvil azulas. They're inyanim yikarim. And they're not a tzerich ha'elamis. There's also in the lukus is higher than elamis. But after begin within that itself, when you understand the yoker of the inyanim hagluyim, so thus come and tifra verstand in the yoker of the inyanim hane'elam. So that's the. So it was mevar till now. It's the konezer in Saf Lamal and Kasamata din Tachlis. So what's the Rebbe start off? Okay, we'll start again in Siv inside. Just want to look at nachar pratim nacham also zayin klur. So Maamar hine besen dann im Elo der in Sof Maila in Kesamata Mata in Tachlis and Vies Madrigas paid in Sof Baruch we Shepherd's God benem. So what's the Nikota till now? The inner Lamata in Tachlis is the fact that Erin Sof is Misgala Mispashit Biz Lamata Mata. So the fact that Erin Sof is made and Misgala in the lowest in all Elamis till the lowest Madrigas. So that's the inner Agili that is Misgala in Elamis. What's the Maila in Kes? Fakert that the inner of his almost that the air is not Misgala. And the inyan atzimtzum, the fact that the Eibusher is the keich hagvol, the keich l'halim b'lahaster, that the ein sof of a lukus shouldn't be nezgal in elamis, that is the inyan of l'mayla ma'ala adiketz. There's on ashir in the inyan atzimtzum, the keich hagvol, l'halim esair, there's also bleak vol in yanim in the inyan atzimtzum. That's what the beikar was the Rebbe Geret also last year in Tov Shagafei. So here the Frierdiker Rebbe says that the two inyanim of Erin Sof, the ma'ala adiketz ma'ala adiketz is two madrigas in the air itself. It means according to what's explained till now, it's the same inyan. We're talking about air. Whatever the air is Erin Sof. The shaila is whether it's begili in elamis or not. Whether this Indian is bezgalas in the zulas or not bezgili in the zulas. The retman not legabi whether it's bezgal in the zulas or not. Two inyanim in the air itself. The air biyachas la'atzmin, there's two inyanim in the air. Good, that's one thing. That's the first thing that was. Inim is adat in this bar. Apirish there is all in kesmat in tachlis kfishu gepshut. It's also not stam as gepshut. It means pshat in zayir, pshat in kabbalah. Means every chilik in Torah has the four chalakim. So derech pshat benister the Torah. That's also this Ribe Yodem Neflan. If you get explains Lamata Mata in Tachlis, 2.5 prakim which are Yodem Neflan Lamata in Tachlis, but it's all according to the Derech Hapshat, so to speak, in history of the Torah. She'erin Sof Elo L'mayla V'nimshach Lamata Mata means that the air is bis almos. That means it's contained within itself. The air is nichla on the etzem and is not meir b'chutz. That's the kava helim. And then there's nimshach Lamata, the kava gili that is meir and mispashet in elamis. Now here, this word that they add here, she'ali l'mayla v'amshach l'mat and bezim kemis nefradim, that is what the Lashon Rebbe wrote in the Rashi Prakim. Yeah, I mentioned this last time. In the Maamar itself, the Lashon of the Maamar, we went through this last time. Just want to bring out this point because it's but the Lashon that the Rebbe said in the Maamar, there's no status. I'm just trying to bring out this nuance. But the Rebbe says there that ist es a Naim Minion, das Beis Madreges und Ehrens auf Atzmi. Nicht wie man gerät früher, that it's nimshach l'mayla, and yered l'mat, and er sagt, it's an Ehrens of, wie is, in the air, the way the air is, not whether he's mispashet in the zulas or not. In the air, the way the air is, there's two in yonim. L'mayla and kes l'mat adin tachlis. And the Rashi Prakim, the Rebbe wrote that mechadish, loy l'mat l'mayla beis mekemis nefradim, kim b'mokim echad. Means that Gasha, that according to the beer told now, so the Indian of Lamaila and Kesamata in Tachlis is the base Mekemis Nefrod. Two Mekemis. Kemis Nefrod, the Lashon is. And here's Mesiv Machadish, the base in Lamaila and Kesamata in Tachlis, Yeshnegam and Mokim Echad. But in Sof Kvishu Ba'atzmi. So there's what's the Hadgasha in this word that according to what's inspired till now, the Indian of Helam, the Gilui, is in two Mekemis Nefrod. I mean, we'll understand, we'll appreciate what the Hadgosh over here is, that it's in two separate Mekayim. The Pashtas that I've been saying, the Indian Hagilui is, it's two separate, the Helam and the Gilui are in two separate Madregas, in two separate, you say, Mekayimis. You have elements where there Lukus is Meir, or you have that element where there Lukus is Bizgalas, and you have the Nekodavis Amos, where Lukus is not Meir. So it's Sveva Zundere Mekayimis, Sveva Zundere Inyan. Mashaken here, within the Eir itself, which Eir itself is one Eir, it's ein Eir, and their Gufa you have two Inyan. We'll see what that gush is, that it's in two separate mekemes. What's nitayse with this word, that according to the beer till now, it's the in of Lamaila and Lamata and two mekemes nefradim. But I'm just so I can avert them. That's one thing. It says, "V'ata mesim mechadish shebezin none of Lamaila and Kesel Lamata Mata adin tachas yeshnam gam b'mokim echad. Erin sof pishu ba'atzmi." And the Fidik Rebbe's lashon is that in Erin sof atzmi him beis madreges. Yeah, that's the him beis madreges by Erin sof. And not only is two madreges, but edel sheish hefresh gadol b'neim. So was will the Fidiger madgesh sein with them that it's two madreges, not separate madreges, because it's all on the same air. We're not dealing with two madreges could mean two eres. We're not saying that erin something includes within itself two eres. We're saying in the same air, in the same Indian, there's two madreges. So to see what the pshat in that is. And these two madreges is hefresh gadol b'neim. There's a chilik between them. It's nicht the selber Indian. Was will is bringing with them? So we then move on. She'ena kavana l'inyan ha'ichelis. She'bicholte lere de lizgalis. She'bicholte shalei lere de lizgalis. Ki inyan ha'ichelis inyan echad she'esh bebeis tenuas. How do you understand the pashas? The musik of Yechelis. The Rebbe says weiter that amidas inyan ha'ichelis is an atzmus. We'll see that. But what's the pashas at bottom of Yechelis? I mentioned last time just to touch it up the pashtos that there's a difference in the figure of Zavai Barichis and there's a Maamar Simini Kechesam. There's other Maamarim that you say that someone is about Kayach. About Kayach means that the fact that he has the ability to do Kach V'Kach, person has the ability to write because he has the Kayach HaKsiv B'Yad. Not that the Nefesh, not that the person, he could. Why could he? Because he has a Kayach. He has an aspect within himself which is a Makir, has the ability to do Kach V'Kach. Yechelis means not that he has the Kayach to do this and this prat. He has the Makir of Gila and the Makir of Helim. He's a Yachal. Means the nefesh is mufshit, let's say, from seichel and from midas. Say nefesh neise keiches. The nefesh is mufshit from seichel and midas. He's not mitzui. He's pashat b'talas abshitis. Say, but the nefesh, the etzem, he's a yachol. What does it mean? He's a yachol. For what can a race come from seichel and midas? Let's say because he's not defined. So you have one way you say the reason why the teitzah could come from the makar because the makar contains within himself this element. He has the ability to do this. So it's not that he's a yachol, not that the etzem, the makir, he's a yachol. He's nishken yachol. He's what he is. He has the ability for this and this prat. He has a keich hatanua. Yechelis means that you say that he could. So can. For what is can? Because he's not defined. Because he's not defined, can out sein from him. Because he's not mugder, therefore anything can come from him. Not because say that the dogma chassidus, you say that on a gavan lovin you're able to color any color. Why? Not because the gavan lovin contains within himself a shaykhis to red and a shaykhis to blue. Since he has no tzir, so nothing is nothing. He doesn't negate anything. He's not defined. That's Yechelis Beifin Kali were saying that the etzem is a yachol. Is a yachol. Why is he a yachol? Not because he has the keiches of those inyanim, because he's not mugdar. So when you say Yecheles, so we're saying that the Makir, the Baal Hayy, the Yachol, there is no, according to say, let's say there's two Madregas, whatever the two Madregas are. Let's say two Madregas are the Eira Blikvol and Eira Gvol. We'll see the Hemshech Adar Siv Gimel, what it means, the two Madregas here in Eir itself. But Lamar Zagin is that in the Eir contains the Eir which is not Mugbal and Eir which is Mugbal. In Yecheles, there is no Eir Blikvol and Eir Gvol. There's no Blikvol and there's no Gvol. The Yecheles is Mushit from the Tziyurim of Blikvol and Gvol. So for us, mitzad em ken zayin blikvol and gvol, because he's not defined. Since he's not defined, so he could be side this way and side that way. So then then it's not two inyanim. Two madregas means that there is an aspect that relates to this inyan. There's an aspect that relates to that inyan. In Yecheles, there's no this inyan, there's no that inyan. He's yachol that inyan. Not that he contains these inyanim. Ken, but sister Ken. He doesn't have the two madregas. Because he's not defined, therefore can al zayin for him. So in Yecheles, it's not two, you can't say two madregas. There's none of these tziyurim because his mufshit can al zayin. So two madregas can come in our zayin. If you have an which is blikvul and an which is gvul, you can say that there's two madregas. That's zwei inyan. In Yecheles, there is no of these two inyan. You say because it's not mugdir, no can al zayin. So that's not a gather of two madregas. It says even if you're going to want to say that there is the is to say afilu nitchak v'leimer. So that's the first. Yef shleimer shem beis madregas. So when the Friedrich Rebbe says that Erin Sof hat sich zwei inyanim, redt sich nicht der Darge of Yecheles. In Erin Sof Shlifen Hatzins, and there's Kama Darges. So when he says Erin Sof is Lamaila and Lamata, he is not dealing with the higher Madrega of Eir, which is Pchinas HaYecheles Shaber. He's dealing with already, where there's already a tzir of an Eir. Erin Sof, not that he's Yachel HaEir. Not that Yachel HaEir means he's beyond the definition of Eir. He's not Eir. There's the Etzem which is beyond Eir. Can Meir sein, es kann sein Eir, es kann sein Nishter, for was can sein Eir, can sein Nishter. It's nicht stuck in Eir. It means he's higher than the definition of Eir, whatever definition of Eir is. But because he's not defined, can sein Eir and can sein Nishter. So mitzad dat madrig, imidos can sein verschiedene Sachen, and inyanim afachim, but there's no yachas to the inyanim which come from it. In that madrig, there's not tefillas smakim to this tzir or that tzir. It's his pshitas. So there's ein inyan. So it's not shaykh to say two madrigas. So afilum nitchik goleimar shebeis madrigas hainu beis tnuas. So, I mean, not verstehen, but Pasha say Yecheles, and it says, you say Yecheles in the regular case, even if you say that he's mufshit from the Tzir Pratim, but Ava became the fact that in Vos, there is a certain, in the regular Musik of Yecheles, there's a certain Yachas, there's a certain Tfisa Smakim to the Inyanim that he's Yachal. I don't know if it's Mamish Negeh here, but the Elmers of Shchavav get me right in the Legani, you go into every single prat, so I'm saying this. But it's not Mamish Negeh. But in Be'efin Klali, when you speak about Yecheles, so there you say, on one hand you say that the reason why he could have Lahoir and Shalei Lahoir is because he's not defined. That means that he doesn't relate to Gilui and relate to Helim. His Maile Bashtetnish that he's a dover which could contains within himself the ability to Yizgalis and the ability to Lahalim. There's Mufshid therefore. That's the word Yecheles. But since he's not defined, so therefore it can be in any mode. But Ava became the fact that he's not defined is expressed in the Nukoda that he contains within himself the ability as von em ken zayin sai erd and sai helim. Mit was bringt chareis his head He said the nefesh is next to keches. So the etzem nefesh there's no mocker yet for chachma and bina and seichel amidus. The nefesh is mufshit, but mitzat pshitusay, so you can't define him that he has to be dafke in a certain kav. There could be anything. It could be seichel amidus. So on one hand you say in the mitzad dinin of Yecheles there's not tfisa smakim to the tzir of seichel amidus. Because we're dealing with Yecheles. But with Sheni, how is it expressed the fact that it's not defined? That there could be Chachma, there could be Seichel, there could be Midas. So there could be some type of Yachas to the Tnuas, even though there is no Tnuas yet. Mitzad the Darg of Yecheles, there is no two Eiris. That there's no two Eiris. There's no two Madrigas. There's him. But the fact that his Pshitas, the fact that his head Agdara is expressed that there could be anything, so there, you could say that there's two Tnuas there. Means it's not the pshit is the way it is ba'atzmei, that there's no relation at all to Shiurim which come from him or to inyanim which come from him. There is safkas of these inyanim expressed, the fact that it could be Gilan, it could be Helim, expresses his head Agdara. So there is somewhat of a tizas smakim to the inyanim of Gilan Helim. As if Altin can zag, but the Rebbe says even if you're going to be doichag and to say that there's shaykhs to say some yachas to tnuas mitzad the darg of Yecheles, but if you think about adds yesh hefresh gadol b'neim, if possible is being the word that the hefresh gadol b'neim, you can't say in Yecheles is hefresh gadol. Mitzad Yecheles that's one inyan, he's not mugdar. So what's the nikud of air and what's the nikud of helm? The same inyan, the fact that he's not mugdar. The inyan of the fact that he can be Meir is not a separate inyan. It's not mufresh from the fact that he can be behelim. The word is that he's not mugdar. He's not mugdar. Ken zayin das and ken zayin yens. Even if you're going to say that the fact that it could be all these pratim expresses Heder Agdara, but Sof Kol Sof, there's no chilik between the Helam and the Gil. Because we're dealing with an alien which is mufshit from the Tziurim of Gili Vehelim. And mitzad this Heder Agdara can all zayn. The Meile, so the Ef Shloime Sheshepesh Gadol B'nei. Shari Amitis HaYicheles Si Ba'efen Sheyochel Kach Sheyochel Kach V'yochel Efen Hofchi B'Shav. V'loi Hefresh Klal. We'll see, this is another time. Amitis HaYicheles, Bald Zen. The deal. Korcha Tzarech Lema Shumdur Madrege Shalmatim Inin HaYicheles. So we'll see. We'll have more clarification in this part also in the Hemshech Advarim. The fact that Yechelis is mufshat legamri from Shaykhas to say a Yachas to Amitas Yechelis is the that they're both b'shavet. It's mashma. You can have a dark in Yechelis where they're not both b'shavet. Amitas Yechelis where they're both b'shavet. Again, in Zendas in the Hemshech. Omnam l'chura any move on. Ich shaykh lever ma'ilo ulamata mata be'erdin sof. So with the chura, so then meredach zwei madreges and zwei madreges. Talking about there's, let's say the Rebbe's going to touch differently the two madreges. Not well. I'm just saying for the sake of Gringer that there's era bligvo and era gvul. Two madreges in there. But l'chura, and what are we saying? There are two madreges and there are two separate inyanim. There's a air which mitzuyer bebligvo, let's say, and there's a air which is mitzuyer begvul. Nachamol in Yecheles there is no bligvo and there's no gvul. In Yecheles he's mufshit from both of these things. Es can alt sein, not because he's an Indian of Helam and Indian of Gili, because he's not defined. But Mele can alt sein. Here we're saying that to bring out that we're dealing with a darga of air. There's already, so to speak, a tzir of two madrigas. So that's a stirah to the musik of Ein Sof. That's the stirah to the air is Ein Sof. The air is Ein Sof means that he's pasha b'talas apshitas, that he has no definition. So if he has no definition, we come in and sagen zwei madrigas, and that each madriga is a bazunder Indian. Hefresh gadol b'neim. And I'm saying the Rebbe is asking it as a shayla, l'chura setirat eir in sof, but l'chura this line itself needs to be understood. I'm saying the Rebbe is lashon in the Rashi Prakin that we're saying that within one eir, we're not saying that there's two eirs. Ein eir, which is eir in sof, and there eir faran tzveinyan. So if it's two madreges, so it's not the same eir. If it's two madreges means that there's an eir and a za'ifin, and an eir and a tzveita ifin. So then it's not the same eir. We're saying it's the same eir, but this eir, you say it's, so to speak, murka from two things. So what's meant? So then it's murkav. If it's murkav, if it's tzir, so it's not Ein Sof. That's the shayla. Says hine bepirish erin. What we can teach that Ein Sof means not ultimate Ein Sof. The Rebbe means hine bepirish erin Sof. Vara ben azam kam mekem. The Rebbe explains the kam mekem is that the pshat of erin Sof doesn't mean. Aderech gets a eir hashemesh. Eir hashemesh doesn't mean that the eir is shemesh. It means the eir which extends the emanation from the sun. I don't know how you teach eir, but the his pashtas hashemesh. Eir Hashemesh, Mashegem Mashaz sagt Eir in Sof, so that teach that Eir in Sof means Eir Shel in Sof. That the Ein Sof is the Etzem, Atzmos is Ein Sof, and the Eir in Sof, the Lashon is Eir in Sof means an Eir, the Spashtus of the Etzem, the Spashtus of Ein Sof. Avdem sagt Alter Rebbe doesn't need their teach, but the teach of Eir in Sof means that the Eir itself is Ein Sof. Ki im Eir Shehu Atzme Ein Sof. Yeah, last year, other Maamar, I think also in the beginning of the Chafei, but Maamar earlier that the Chrechem, that Chassidus brings the Rayis, that when Zer steht Eir Ein Sof, meant this, the Eir Guf is Ein Sof, and not that Ein Sof is Kaya Le'etz. So now, what does it mean when you say the Eir is Atzmi is Ein Sof? The Hainu Ein Sof Amiti. Emes Ein Sof. She'en li Tchila, ve'en li Seif, v'chulu. V'im kein li Shaykh b'chiluk edarges na Lo Matam. Saying the Ein li Seif, Ein li Tchila, I'm verstehen exactly what the Kavanah here, Ein li Tchila. But Ein Seif means that it's Pasha B'tavas Apshitis. It has no tzir. There's no Arkava. It's an air which has no definition. That's Ein Sof. There's no Hagdara what the tzir of the Seder is. If there's no definition to the Seder, vi Shaykh Hazag zwei madrigas. Within this iniguf for two madrigas. Yeah, the Rebbe adds the Lashon that the air is Ein Leitchila. I mean, there's when you say the word Ein Leitchila in the air, there's a couple of Yifanim. But there's the simple Eifin is Ein Leitchila, not that the air has no, is two tashon Ein Leitchila. Ein Leitchila means that it has no mocker. Its Metzius stems from its own Mohos. That you could only see in Atzmus. The Eibishter is Metzius, the fact that he exists is Nevea Mitzat his Atzmus. There's Azaz which exists. Only the Etzim is Metzius and Atzmus, and is Mechuyev Metzius. The fact that he exists is Nevea, it's Nevea Mitzat his Mohos. Mashek and any other Indian outside of Atzmus, Gilei Lukos, is Pashtus, all these words, all these Inyanim, are Inyanim which their Metzius is not Me'atzmusam. Nothing has to be. Besides the Eibishter himself, nothing has to be. There doesn't have to be the Musik of Gili, there doesn't have to be the Musik of Spashtus, Ein, so nothing has to be. So Yeshli, so for sure has a Makar. Has a Makar. But in the Tchila also, but in the Tchila usually means that Mitzusim Yatzmuse, and so of them Kevin is not going to the Mitzusim Yatzmuse. Is Nevea Mitzad Ratzon Etzem. So Yeshli Tchila. So one touch that could be in the tchila means that that in was bashtet the ein sof of the earth, that there's no, not only that his ein sof bashtet in them, that he's mispashet b'kol makim, but there's no hagdara to how high and how mufshit and how pshit is the earth is. In the tchila that there's no sheer to the depth and the aliyah of the earth. Nicht in the tchila in the sense that the earth has no makir or hatish ken anib. The earth has a makir. Not only has a makir, he also has a tchila in a certain degree, because it's ke'en shekot me'eder. He's not kot me'eder. I don't know want to go into these pratim now. But in the tchila, one touch could be in the tchila over here means that there's no, that it's a mitzvah pshitis. Not only that he's a certain inyan which extends itself everywhere, which is blig v'or, is nimtze b'kol makim, but there's no gvul to the pshitis and to the hafla of the earth. That's in the tchila. There's no beginning that you could say that in them bashtet the pshitis, and this pshitis is everywhere. There's no hagbala in the ilui of the earth. As that in the tchila. So that's all bringing out that it's amitis apshitis. If it was a certain degree of pshitis, so you could say there's a certain hagbala to the pshitis earth, and was bashtet there pshitis that is nimtza b'kol makim, that is blikvol, he's mispashit l'matamata. In the tchila saying that it's amitis apshitis, means that there's no definition to the ilui of the earth. That's I think the pashta taich you say over here, the Rebbe means over here in the tchila. Or we can the taich not zweite taich echet in the tchila. That the Rebbe brings that the Chiddush is Samavav, he brings that the Alter Rebbe says in Gersa Kedesh that the earth is not only expresses the Ein Sof of Atzmos, but the earth also contains within itself the Ein Tchila of Atzmos. Also the fact that Atzmos is Mitzvah Me'atzmosei, that's also in Nisgala, and that also is Vertares gebracht durch the earth. But Lomer das Apel is Nafazait. But in Pashas, in the Tchil is bringing out the ultimate pshittis of the earth. Yeah. And the Fizeh, the marker is not, the touch in the Tchil means what I'm saying, that there's no shear to the ilui and the pshittis of the earth, then the marker is not in some above. The marker is a Maamar Lech Lecha in Aleph, other Maamarim. In this Hemshan and some above doesn't say that this word, that in the Tchil, that there's no hagbola to the pshittis and the ilui of the earth. So the scientists are because they mean this, the other touch name that the earth also brings out the mitzvah me'atzmos of that. To me vidam adar yeah, mit gelernt to vayelach, so that's the okay. Also l'chorei bazei, so since the earth is obviously so, and amitis ein so of him came the shaykh bechiluki darges the ma'ila mate. Come doch nicht sagen, that's all tzir. That's all. There's this darga, there's that darga. The earth is ein so. So the yuva not bibir rabbein azak. Bedal haven in earth in so b'shel achrov. Was sagt Alter Rebbe dort in the Maamar Lohaven in Erin Sof? So there he says Erin Sof Nikras Ashpas Akech V'Chayis and Menis Barich. That means not the etzem, but the etzem, the way the etzem comes begili. Hashpas Akech V'Chayis and Menis Barich. That means that the Kech V'Chayis, the way it comes begili, the way it comes and it's nizgala. Shiyochel Akech Hazel Hachis Elmis Inketz. Vakein Nikra Ein Sof. That's why it's called Ein Sof, because it's Yochel Hachis Elmis Inketz. Means it's just bligvul. The earth is bligvul. That's one thing. That's Alter Rebbe's taich that earth is Ein Sof. But then the Alter Rebbe says, the main part that the Rebbe wants to bring out here is that the Alter Rebbe says there that Nikra Ervel Ishefa Lefi She'en B'mhutzi V'atzim Mrs. Baruch Shum Shini V'Yispailis M'amshach Asa Ora L'Hakis Kol Ha'ilms K'moshe Le'er HaShemesh V'chein Kshen Shom Mislavesh B'aguf V'meil Aguf Na'asechai V'ein Tzrichel Yis'azik L'Hakis Yikub V'aderech Shefa V'chein Zeu Gam Kin Moshe Le'er V'ar Devin the whole Lashon Moshe Le'er V'ar. The Nekuda the Rebbe wants to bring out from the Alter Rebbe's Vart there is why is it called Er? The reason why they call them the Mkobalim, call them Hamshachas Elokus, B'lashon Er not Shefa. So there's Kama Pratim. They say, why is the Hamshachas Elokus called Er and not Shefa? So the Pashta beard is because Shefa is that the B'shas the Rav is Mashpia Seichel to the Talmud, so he's not Mashpia the Seichel Kameshu. He's Mitzamson the Seichel that it should be Masim to the Tzir of the Mekabel. Mashenkin the Shemesh is Mispashit Kameshu. He's not Mishtane to give over his light according to how much the world is able to handle. The behirus, the light, the way it is in the shemesh, that's what's mispashit. So when you say the word what do you want to express the word that is me'ein amar. Using the word shefa would mean that the ashpa is not me'ein mashpia. The ashpa is the echos of the mashpia, the way it's in the mitzumsim the geif. Dovim that is bringing that the is the shefa exactly the way it is by the elyon, or does they better mispashit? They say they're going to get to shemesh that the behirus exactly the way it is by the shemesh does take the gidu. But the Alter Rebbe is not in that zweite word why we call it The Gosh exists since, but Alter Rebbe says it there. That the reason why we're calling them Shachal Ma'al B'Shem and not B'Shem Shefa is because is a Ora B'Vad. Mashiach Shefa is a Mahuzdav. No, there's one adgasha in shefa. The chisaron of shefa is that the hashpa is not the way it is by the rabbis mitzumtzum. Mashikin eir is me'ein amar that the behirus the way it is in the shemesh is mispashik. There's another adgasha in eir me'ein amar. If I kept l'chora chisaron in eir, shefa has a mile. Shefa, the shefa is a mahuz davar. Is not a ha'arabel vat. Shefa is that a certain percent of the seichel of the Rav he gives over to the Talmud. Not what the Talmud gets doesn't reflect the entire seichel of the Rav. But that mitzimtzum is a percentage of the seichel of the Rav. It gives it the shvas in Gashmi, shvas mayim, that when a little water goes from one place to the next, so there's, even though not the whole water extended itself to the Mekabel, but a little water went. And that little water that went is a mahuz davar. It means a percentage, a little bit of the makir extended itself to the Mekabel. That's a Muslim. We say that what the world gets from the shemesh is a arabel. What does it mean arabel? It's not a percentage of the behirus. There's the light, the way it is by the shemesh, the way it is in the etzem. The behirus, the way it is by etzem. Then there's the behirus, there's the light, the way it is mispashet and meir and vel. The behirus that we get, which is mispashet and meir and vel, there's nothing from the muhus of the shemesh. It's a arabel vat. Means it doesn't contain within itself any similarity or any not similarity is not the right word. There's no percentage of the makir in the oil. So that's what the Rebbe is bringing up. Since we're calling it Eir Ein Sof, even though Eir Ein Sof is the same Ein Sof as the makir. What are we saying when we say Eir Ein Sof? The Ein Sof, the way it is in Atzmos, does state beis pashtus. It's not, the Eir is not that the Ein Sof, the pshittus of Elokut, the pshittus of the Etzem, comes in a lower mode, comes b'tzimtzum, or it's in a lower darga. The same Ein Sof, the way it is in Etzem, does state beis galus. But when Le'idach we're saying that the Isgalus is Shalei Be'erach to the Etzem. What's the Hadgosh of when the Alter Rebbe says, why are we calling it Eir? To bring out that Amshacha, together with the fact that it's Me'ein Amar, but why is we called Eir? Because the same way we get to Eir HaShemesh. The Hashpa is Ein B'min Etzem Klal. So Arda Bavat means it doesn't contain within itself any percentage of the market. It's the Ein Arech to the market. So the Rebbe is going to say here, because the Eir is Ha'arda Bavad, therefore, check the seichel look at madrigas and v'yesh hefresh gadol b'neim. That's the yesod of what Mivodah is bringing. So this is the Maamar and the whole arichis, but this is they bring the whole lashon of the Alter Rebbe there. But Lamed Zen just says, there's no shina. Means why do they want to use the word? They want to bring God that usually when the mashpia is mashpia shefa to the mekabel, so there's a shina. The water, first there was a mayim in one place. When the mayim extends itself to the makabel, so now there's missing the makar. A little bit of the water went to the new place, so there's a little bit missing in the original place. And al derav zeh, so then there's a shini. Now there's when the Rav is mashpia seichel to the Talmud. So first the seichel Rav was in one oifen. Then he changed the svar in a way that it should be behesim to the meich Talmud. So there's a shini. The seichel kameshu who was according to the meich Rav. Now he had this ibiga arbet and the seichel of the Rav is behesim to the tfisa of the Talmud. So that's a shini. Even so, this gedar baitin is a shini v'espailos. So the reason why we called the amshacham al ma'ile b'shem eir is because there's no shini v'espailos me'amshachas ha'ara from the makir. The gilui from the makir is not geir mashina. Commercial eir hashemesh that b'shas the shemesh is meir. The shemesh is not mishtana. It doesn't have to work. It means, on one hand, you're going to say l'chure the light, the way the shemesh, the behirus, the way it is in the shemesh itself, is shalei be'erach, much greater than the behirus, the way we experience it. We'll see that in a minute, but that's the nekuda. So l'chure, in order for the behirus to be in a zasert eifen, that people should be able to experience it, it has to be mishtana. L'chure, the shemesh gilaf mishtana zayin. Zok menei, the hashpas ha'order from the shemesh doesn't have to do. There's no shini v'espailas. The shemesh is not affected. Doesn't have to say. There's no change in the behirus. The way it is in the shemesh, the behirus is the way it is in the spashas. And what's the beer? The beer is, what Alter brings here, is because it's so arabavad. It says, there's no, there's ein tzricha asik. This v'lachein is not going on the whole union. The Alter is saying here, since the neshama is also the rechamela, so therefore also the guy with the neshama we could call it erva. But the dig what Alter Rebbe wants to say is in this Maamar, if you look in the Maamar, that the reason why it's called is because the same way the from the shemesh is ha'ar b'vad. Al derech said the diuk Eir Ein Sof is that it's a horrible vat from the heads. But the subtitle is on the cheshbon advarim. You see, ba'ini b'zeh. Hine mashnikar b'shem Eir harei ze loheda she'enei amor. This is what it wants to be madgish. This does what from the Amol can attach the why we being madgish the shem Eir to bring out the mile of Eir that it's me'ein amor and that it's dov. Verschiedene miles in Eir. Will the Rebbe is bringing a fakert word. That the reason why it's called Erdin Sov is not mitzad the fact that it's made Amor, not mitzad the fact that it's Dovul. That wouldn't explain why in the Eir Shach to say Chilukim Adreges Achi Yesh Hafresh Gadol B'Neim. The diuk of the fact that it's called Eir is Laheiris, that it's not the Mar, that there's not even a percentage of the Mar. The Hashpah doesn't contain within itself any remnants of the Mashpia. Ki im Eir Shein Yonu Kishmei Ha'ara Bavad. So the B'Meila the Rebbe get Mevayer Zayin mitzad the Mar can there's not say Madreges. Again, the minute you say Ha'ara Bavad, can Shein Zayin Madreges. Lama does that in the Vedic. It says, "V'lechein mitzad inin hamor shesham hu amitis inin hayicheles l'shayich lemar l'mayla maylo l'mata mata." It's also a word. We'll skip this. Aber mitzad inin ha'er hari meyese erin sof kanal that it's yachol l'sav asfiras inkes, but liyese ha'ara v'gilui shayich lemar sham maylo maylo l'mata mata. You see the word? What's the nekuda from the word? The fact that you could call the Erdin Sof Shtei Madreges Shavashot B'Neim is because it's a Arab Bavad. That's the nekuda was. So there's come a problem here to be masber. Let me just bring out this point. You say like this. We say the push the marshal in the Eir Hashemish. Why tak is the Eir? You say when they get the Seichel Rav Shefa, Rav Mashpia Seichel Famid. They don't say that the svar of the Mekabel is a Arab Bavad from the Rav. It's not a Arab Bavad. The Rav understands it much deeper. The Talmud understands it in a much more lower Eifin. But the lower Eifin is abyssal, is a percentage in Eichos from the Rav's understanding. It's not, you say, there's nothing there from the Rav. Abyssal. Mashiach by Eir Hashemish, you say that the Eir is a Arab Bavad, doesn't contain within itself anything from the Etzem of the Eir. So what's the Amitzat Sheni, you say it's Mein Amar. So the Nekuda is that is a little bit of a but the Nekuda is that, let me speak when you get to the Moshe of Eir Hashemish itself. The Behiros, the way it is in the Shemesh, is Atzmi Zdikim Mitzias. You say, just how do you say Bechlal? There's Mechuyev HaMitzias and there's Afshar HaMitzias. Ich will nicht eingehen da an der ganzen Idee, but just to bring out the point. There's Mechuyev HaMitzias and Afshar HaMitzias. What's the difference between Mechuyev HaMitzias and Afshar HaMitzias? Reif and Klali. Afshar HaMitzias means that it doesn't have to be. Be'etzem, it doesn't have to be here. And L'Poel Mamish, it exists. So something which L'Poel Mamish exists, it relates in was bastet the fact that it exists, that it's not here, that it exists, it factually exists. Means it's not the fact that its existence is not that it factually exists. He has to be here. It cannot be otherwise. Sazam is certain mohos which must be. So his existence bastet in them that he factually is here. He's here much deeper than that. I think the mashal, like saying this mashal. You say that there's a cloud that Siba has to come before the Mesubah. The cause has to be before the effect. If it's the Siba for the Mesubah, the Siba is not far the Mesubah. So you say that. So that's you say the table is here is in the room. So you say what's the nature of the existence of the table being here? With what does it mean that the table is here? What type of existence is it the table is here? That it's factually here. It doesn't have to be here. He can take it away, no problem. In was bastet the fact that a table exists here, that factually there's a table now in this room. Mashiach the fact that a siba comes before a mesubah, it's a factual thing. L'poel mamish, it could have been otherwise. It can say that the siba should be after the mesubah. Factually speaking, the siba came before. It's not factual. It's not as a that's the fact l'poel mamish. It cannot be otherwise. It means so this existence, it's a much deeper type of existence. You have something. The fact that he exists here. The whole existence is a chitzenius, like a practical existence. Mashiach in something which it cannot be otherwise. So that exists in a whole different way. You versteht das Einyan. But Lama does it when he gets to the Eir Hashemish itself. And this type of mitzvah from this type of mitzvah is a chiluk be'ein arech. There's no comparison between something which is factually here and between something that it's not possible for not to be. That's bleakville here. The table is here is in a limit. How much existence does it contain? It's a limited existence. You could define how strong its being here is. It's here because someone brought it here, and you could define how strong is this. Vifel echos licht in this existence. Mashiach in the fact that a siba comes before a mesuviv, there's no limit to how much. It can't be otherwise. It must be this way. So the fact that it is like this is unlimited. It's bleakvul. It's not here in a certain. It's not the fact that it exists such a cloud is not something which could be nimdad, and you could be made at how strong. Certain things they could last for 10 years. Certain things could last for 20 years. And the cloud of Siva Ketum Lasu is going to last much more years. It's not. Its existence doesn't begin with the factual fact that it's here. It's mufrich to be otherwise. So the fact its existence is shalei be'erech. It's in a certain degree nicht mugbal. The fact it's the eichos of this existence is ain't safe. If I state the meaning. When you get to the Maamar and the Shemesh, you say, how do we experience light? Light is this ability to be able to see. Light doesn't mean the yellow color or anything like that. Light means there's a certain mitzias which causes that we're able to see. And really, this mitzias, I mean, this occasion is stated in Furish, maybe, and it says this lashon clearly, but they'll be able to say this. That what's the pshat that when there's light, you're able to see. Because the Nukud of it's an pshitis. Inyani is bittul agdoris, within this pra. Darkness means that each thing is limited in his own mitzias, and there's no contact between one mitzias and the second mitzias. Its mitzias is ba'atzmei, and I'm something else. In order for me to relate to that, so there's I have to understand it. It has to be masim with my seichel. Means that there's an ability to see the thing the way it is, because is an akudah of being mavatal the barriers between things in a certain respect. So how do we? So let's say is an akudah of pshittas. An akudah of every other mitzvah is a certain seer. It's a table, a bench, a mayach, seichel, midas. Then there's an akudah which in Yani is bittul atzir, bittul mitzvahs, in of pshittas, not definition. And b'meila there's no barriers, and everybody can see what's going on. Well, that's an akudah of pshittas. But now you have the pshittas the way we experience. The way we experience it, there is we know that there's darkness. There's a finsterity. We're living within the state of tzir. There's chayshach, there's darkness. Comes and takes away darkness. Is mavatal the tzir. In the shemesh, there's no concept of tzir. The behirus waits in the shemesh. It's not that in yoni of the is that in order to push away light, to push away darkness. There is no concept of darkness in the atmosphere of the shemesh. There, in Bas Bashtet, the Behirus, the way it is in the Etzem HaShemesh, there's no tzir in Bas Bashtet. It's beyond being taipesit in a tfisa. The Behirus, the way it is in the Shemesh, is not, it's not as Pshittis which in Yani is to be mevatel tzir. It's Pshittis the way it is Be'etzem, the way it is B'mhusay. Pshittis the way it is B'mhusay, and Pshittis the way it is Nirgash in a world of Metzias is Be'en Arech. Because you're experiencing the Pshittis the way it is mevatel tzir, and the Pshittis the way it is B'atzmi Yusay, that's beyond hergish. That's beyond tefis. You understand? So the gilui is a audible vat from the market. You versteht was mir redt, or es geht ein bisschen nicht so glatig. Huh? You understand what I'm saying?
A little over my head.
But the nekuda is that, let's say it in a simple way. There's a concept of light. You say the shemesh is a lashon chassidus is a behiri be'etzim, behiris atzmis. This light that's in the shemesh is in yonei that there shouldn't be darkness to push away darkness, or it's a zasert light where there's no concept of darkness there. The only reality is light. The behirus, the way it is be'etzem, is the light bashtetish in them that he pushes away darkness. It's a mahutz for itself. That light, the way it is a mahutz for itself, we experience that light. We don't experience that. We experience light that it's a zach which pushes away darkness. Why do we experience light that way? We're living in a world of chesha. We're not living in a world we're living in a world of mitzias, where there's chesha. So when the air is nirgash, when the air comes and it's felt in our terms, so what do we margish? Bittul chesha. So air which in yani is to be deiche darkness, and air which in yani is a behiris veiris be'etzem. There's no similarity between them. It's ve'en arech. It's a horrible vat. Not because the behiris, it's not a different pshittas. The air is not a different pshittas than the behiris of the market. But it's a pshittas the way it's nirgash and mitzias, the way it comes in an experiential eifin. We should be margish. It's mizgala. If it's mizgala, it's be'en arech to the market, because the market is beyond tfisa. The market is beyond mitzias. The etzem is beyond. Is beyond me. The Rebbe is saying here that the air, the reason why the air is trying to say to Madrig is not because the air is a lower bleak vol than the etzem. The Eibusher is Ein Sof. Amitis Ein Sof. This Amitis Ein Sof is Nizgale in air. Because if it's Nizgale, so then, if it's an audible vat, if it's Nizgale already, so it's already Be'en Arech to the Makar. The very fact that it's Begilik, because Begilik means that the Ein Sof of the Makar is Nizgale and it's felt. It's Meir. Meir means that it comes in an experience. It comes in a tzir of mitzias. It's mizgili. It exists. You're able to experience it. If it exists, there's already going to be, we'll see what would be, but there's already a to say two madrigas. Not because it's shy to say two madrigas, because the Ein Sof of the earth is less than the Ein Sof of the makar. Not because it's less than the Ein Sof. It's the same Ein Sof of the makar being this guy. But the fact that it's begilui, the fact that it comes in this galus, comes in a mitzias, the mele it's ha'arav avad. There's no relation between the gilui and the etzem. You say in pashtus. This the Rebbe brings here. I'm going into the business of Erbechla, but so I'll focus on what it's here. In his Bible. So where's the Rebbe? Let's say when they get to the Rimshel of Shabbat is Gringer. Where's the Rebbe say here? He says, "Mashnika b'shem she'nei Amar shen yana yu k'shmei arav levat." L'chein, he says, "Mitzad inin hamor shesham hamitis in ha'yichel." What does it mean mitzad inin hamor? Mitzad atzmos, which is hamitis in ha'yichel. What does it mean mitis in ha'yichel? The Rebbe is saying the truth is that the true concept of yichel you can only say in atzmos. What does yachol mean? Yachol means that balkeach means that the fact that you're able to do this is because you relate to that. Yachol means he's beyond the tzir of the inyanim which come from it. Because he's not defined, can al zayin. The truth is that any which is not atzmos has a certain definition. Everything has some type of definition. If it's a mitzias, if it exists, you have to, what exists? If it's something which is nirgash, kein mitzias nicht, has no definition at all, then it's not. Then it's beyond experience. Then it's beyond tfisa. A mitzias means something that's felt in reality, something it's murgish, it's nizgala. Seda is a mitzias. If seda, the same way you say in the marshal of saying klasi bekedem u'mesubav. Anytime you have the factual is the chi of the inyan is higher than gilui. Gilui means that it's a father is older than the son because the sibah comes before the mesubav. That's a factual thing. The gilui is always v'derzach kum tarap in a mitzias, the way it's experienced. The way it's experienced, so what's being experienced there? What's being nizgal? That for someone episatzir. Has to be some mitzias. Masha'enkin atzmos is there's no. So the Rebbe is saying that the amitis in eichel you can only say in atzmos. Any which has agdara, so the fact you say something, the air is pashut. What's the air is pashut? In yoni is that he's not defined, and because he's not defined, if he's not ultimately undefined, he has no tzir at all. Amitis ein sof. That's only atzmos amitis ein sof. Any which is not atzmos has some type of definition of what it is, what's being experienced, what's being nizgala, what's being mortgaged. If it has a tzir, what it is. So the fact that it's not yachol. Yachol means it has to relate to what comes from it. If it doesn't relate at all, this is keinen Hopentag because it has a certain agdara. If the Eibush is kol yachol. Atzmos has no definition at all. He's not bligvul. He's not gvul. He's not shlilas hagvul. So what is it? He's not bligvul, and he's also not bligvul. He's not gvul. He's also not gvul. So that's not an ini which comes in mitzias. You have to be in something when it's nizgal in mitzias. So what exists? What's made? What's made has to have a certain taich was made. The Ein Sof, the way it is in Atzmos, has no tzir at all. There's no agdaris at all. So he's the emes of Yachol. He doesn't relate to anything, but he's not defined that he doesn't relate. His definition is not that he doesn't relate to anything. He has no definition at all. Ken al zayin. He's the mitzvah in the But there, with that, and that Ein Sof is taken as gala. The Ein Sof, but when it's gala, the Ein Sof has to have a taich. That mitzvah, the very fact that it comes into it's nizgala means that it comes into a hergish, it comes into a gilui. If it comes into a gilui, there has to be a taich to this Ein Sof. It cannot be the way it is in the Maamar itself. That's what it says of Chassidus, that the difference between the Ein Sof of the Ein Sof of Maamar, that's not the Nekudah we're going to see here, but in Chassidus, the difference between the Ein Sof of the Ein Sof of Maamar, is that the Ein Sof of the Etzem is not, it's in Yoni is not Ein Sof. The Eibusher in Yoni is not, by you say the fact that the air is Ein Sof, that's its Torah. If you want to describe the Maila Sa'er, the Maila of Er Bashtet then that is not defined. The fact that it's not defined, that's his Inyan. His Inyan is that he's not defined, that he's Mufshit, that he's Pasha. In Atzmos, Zan Inyan is Nish that he's not defined. He's Atzmos, he has no Inyan. The Maila is not defined. The fact that it's Ein Sof, it's not Nish in them Bashtet Zan Maila. In you can't say that there's no definition at all. There's no Inyan of Ein Sof. If there's no Inyan, so nothing exists. That's not Inyan Mitzias. Atzmos is built in Mitzias. So the Eibusher's being is not an experiential type of being. If it's an Inyan Mitzias, dafür stop an episode taich. So the Ein Sof of has to have a certain taich. To be vinna b'chol sadavar hazeh. Oh, so Lamer Zama the Rebbe Zalto. So he says, so he says. So mainly said mitzad inin amor shama mitas in ayicheles leishayich lemer lemaylo lamata. You can't say there's no mala, there's no matter, and there's no neisei. Neisei mele means nicht mugder, but there's no yachas to this inin of that inin. Aval leishayich lemer sheish nebez madreges. As kam leishayich lemer sheish havish godaveni. Aval mitzad inin ari im hayesei erin sof What does it mean? It means even though the Eir is Ein Sof, that means that the Eir is it's the Ein Sof of the Atzmus. The way it's Mizgala, it's not a different Ein Sof. So the Eir is Taka Ein Sof. Ukenashim Knes Ein Sof Yocheles Havas Elam in Ketz. Ulamayli is Sfiris Adin Ketz. Mikankim Liyesi HaArda Vigilui. Akaponim Sheir Shamakar LaArda Vigilui. Belvad Shayach Lemar Sham Maila Matamata. Beimishin Bez Madrigs. So the lashon that the Rebbe is saying here is, that's the mashmos, since in Eir it comes begili. If it comes begili, so it's what are we saying? There's the Atzmos is Ein Sof, Heder Agdara B'chlal, Ken Al Zayin, but there's no yachas to the things which could be. Mashiach in Eir when you say that the Eir is Ein Sof, because the Eir is Amit Ein Sof, therefore let's say you say because he's Ein Sof, he's not defined. There could be bligvol and there could be gvol. But what's the pshat? There could be bligvol and gvol. Mitzad the fact that the Eir is Ein Sof, therefore there can be bligvol and gvul. But that means that it's Meir b'poil that there's an Eir which could be bligvol and an Eir which could be gvul. So the hechir is tu inyan. Since the Eir is the Ein Sof the way it is in Atzmos, was kommt bis galos. So when it comes bis galos, must zayin that there's an inyan of Ein Sof. Let's say the tu inyan we're dealing with over here is bligvol and gvul. So mitzad the Atzmos there is no bligvol, there's no gvul. He's nish mugder klal. Eir is the way they don't come begilu. You don't come behergish. If it comes behergish, so there is an Eir, there is a mitzias of bligvol, and there's a mitzias of gvol. It's a svei madregas. Even though the Eir is Ein Sof, because the Eir is Ein Sof, b'meile hat alts. But hat alts in a mitzias, not in the built-in mitzias. What's negay here, so one is that therefore the Ein Sof of Eir is not going to be amitis Ein Sof. The Ein Sof the etzem Ein Sof has a certain touch. But what's negel over here is that b'meila the tnuas, which are neveh mitzad the pshita sahir, each inyan is an inyan for itself. So if we have this, just to go back to the word of shtei mekaymis and makom echad, when you say according to what the Rebbe is being mevayer till now, that the nekuda of the Maila adin kes mata adin taras Maila adin kes is that the fact that the Eir is based almos. I think Maila the mata is the fact that it's begili. Amaret gili vehelim legabi who are we speaking about gili vehelim? Vegavem and you say that there's Eir. We have to understand. Let's say in the mashal there's the shemesh has behirus in a beyond mitzias the gaif, not on ifid of mitzias, beyond experience. Pshit is k'meishu b'pshitose. Let's say. Then you have the way it's morgish. Then the way it comes begili. The way, if it's mortgage, so there's episode of haran. That means there's something exists. Something was nizgal. It has to be was paramitzias is das. If it came begilui, there's what something was nizgal. And then there's you say that it's nizgal. It's in yoni is to be mayor in eilamis, to be mayor in mitzias. So if in yoni of the Eir is lahayr ba'olam savade eilam is the in eilam helam and gil are two separate in yoni. Eir which in yoni is lahayr ba'olam is also going to be shaykhas this chakos of two mekemis nefrad. If I state, according to the beer that I was speaking till now, the beer till now is not two in yanim in the Eir the way it is batzmiyusa in the Eir itself. The inin agili mitzadatzmi. What's the pshat amata that is begili ba'ilams? What's the pshat amata that is nelam ne'a'ilam? So we're dealing with the Eir the way he relates to whether he's felt an eilamis or not. So an eilamis it's svei bazundere in yanim. Gili v'helim is two separate in yanim, two separate mekemis. Whether because it's begili or because it's not begili, it's svei bazundere in yanim. And even though mitzad Eir, the fact that it can be nizgala, the fact that it can be means why is it that he has a matan kasama? Even according to the beer before, why is it that he has the ability to be mayor and to be behelim? Because it's Ein Sof. But according to the beer earlier, we're not dealing with the Ein Sof the way it is in its mahos. As a result of the fact that it is Ein Sof, so there's two ways how it relates to Eilamis. So it's the Eir the way it comes in the mizgeres of Eilamis. So Moses having darim behesim to the place that he's coming to. If the Eir is meretach out in a helen bagili, according to what's inspired till now, is the Eir the way he is in relation to the zulas, whether the zulas experiences him or not. Legabe the zulas, so there's gila and helmasivas in the reinyan. The Eir the way he comes in a way of being made and mizgalet, kalapi the zulas, so it's going to be two in yanim, helen begila. Tzvim akemis nefrag. Don't retmenish the Eir the way he's made in eilam. Nish das retten. Meret the Eir the way he is batzmiyusay. So there, it's ein inyan tak. The Eir the way it is batzmiyusay, it's not the inyan blikvol. The inyan gvol that we're going to deal with is not the whether he's made in velt or not. what type of relation he has to the Mekabel. In the Ein Sof Kamei Shubatz Miyusei, there's two inyan. So it's in Shaycha Zagen Baby came Mr. Front. Because in the Ein itself, in Yoni is Ein Sof. What's in Yoni of the Ein? The Gila of the Ein Sof of the Eibush, the Pshittas of Alakus. But since, even though, so it's not to say two Mekem Mr. Front. Two Mekem Mr. Front means that the Gila and the Helim are two separate inyan. It's not a separate inyan. Because the Eibush is Ein Sof, so he has Sai Gila and Sai Helim. According to the beer earlier, you're right that the Yisoid of Gila Vehelim is Neveah from the fact that the Eir is Ein Sof. But where is this in of Gila? What does it mean, Gila? That he's married in Eilemis. What does it mean, Helim? That he's distinct from Eilemis. So the Gila and the Helim are two separate things. It's Neveah from the same Nekuda. But the Gila is not one Indian of the Helim. Because what's the Pshat Gila? Is the Eir the way he's experienced in Eilemis. The way he's experienced in Eilemis and Klape Eilemis, Gila Helim are two separate Inyanim. So the Eir, the way he comes and he's married in Eilemis, is going to be a chilukim between the Gila and the Helim. The way it is in the Guf, we're not dealing with the the way in Yoni is to be not the way the comes to be married in Veld. Veld is Metzias, a Metzias of Gvul, let's say, and in Veld Gvul is Indian, and Bligvul is Indian. We're dealing all within the realm of which is in Yoni of is Pshittis. In Yoni of is Ein Sof. So we're not saying the way the Ein Sof is not the way the Ein Sof is married in Veld in Metzias. We're saying the way the Ein Sof is b'pshitusa. If you say the Marshal and the Shemesh, you would say not the way the Behirus is mayor to people, which their reality is darkness. And what's the Pshat being Misalik Chaysha? Before there's a concept of darkness, there's the Behirus Hashemesh, the way it is in the Etzem. And then there's the way he's Begili. The very fact that he's Begili. Gili is already Be'ein Arech to the Etzem. Because the Etzem, the Moir, is Hecher from Get, is Nishke Mitzias. The Moir, the Eibishter is built in Mitzias. His existence, he doesn't exist in an experiential life. He exists better, and under certain seas. And there, so dort hat kein Zier. Mashink in the Ein Sof. The way it is Begilui, so we're dealing all Ein Sof. Not Ein Sof the way it's made in Mitzias. Das redt man Biz ist. Biz ist der redt man the Ein Sof the way it's made in Welt. Since it's Ein Sof the way it's made in Welt, so even though mitzad the Ein Sof, the Gila and Helam are one Indian, but since we're dealing with the Ein Sof the way it's made in Welt, and in Welt Gila and Helam are two separate Inyanim, so there's two Mekemis Nefradim. Means there's the air the way he is in the mode of Gilui, and there's the air the way he is in the mode of Helen. Mashik and Daretman, not the way he relates to Mitzias. The air Ba'atzman. So Dart, on one hand, you're going to say it's Ein Sof. But Le'idach, since the way they come Begilui, so it's Shaykh to say two Madreges, there's Bligvul, there's Gvul, there's, what did I just say? Two Madreges and Hefresh Gadol B'nei. But I'm saying, what I'm trying to bring out is, on one hand we say that it's Mokim Echad, and Le'idach we say there's two Inanim Nefradim. It's not, there's, in Yechelis there's only one Inyan, Sedod Etzem, which is Ein Sof. In the Maila Lamati we spoke till now, what you're dealing with the Erbe Yachas to Eilemis, there it's two Mekemis Nefradim, Seba Zunder Inyan. Doi das nicht kein Seba Zunder Inyan. It's the same Erbe. Since the Erbe is Pashut, maybe I'll say it this way, this is make it more clear. I want to bring out just the prat the way it brings in the ACS here, but the general theme of this masbara is that in Eir, when you say Ein Sof, since Eir is a Metzias, so in was bashtet. In Atzmos, the fact that it is Ein Sof is not because not in Yoni is not Ein Sof. In Yoni is Hedrak Dara Klal. Mashaykin in Eir, there it's the Ein Sof the way it's in this Gala, the way it's Murgish. So what's the pshat Ein Sof mitzad Eir? That the Eir is such a Metzias Muflas, Alakus is such a davar mufla that he's not defined. When you say it's such a davar mufla, it's such a great say ultimate being that he has no definition at all. That's a non-definition. That's a Metzias, not a built-in Metzias. That's a Metzias. It means in was b'shteit zayin ma'ile that he's not defined. And one of the nafkaminas that are going to be is mitzad the Ein Sof of Atzmos. You say mitzad the Shleimos Ein Sof. So you say the famous Avedis Hakedesh that Ein Sof kshesh yesh the keach bebulti bagvul kach yesh the keach bagvul. Sheim toimar that he has no keach bagvul atem chas shleimos. So what's the beer that the Avedis Hakedesh says? Why is it? What's the problem if you say the Eibush is not going to be keach bagvul? Because then you're giving him a definition. You're mechaz shleimos, and the Eibush is ultimate shleimos. But an Indian, if you think mitzad this part of the Avedis Hakedesh, if you have an Indian which is not meiser shleimos, a certain quality which is not, it should be because Ein Sof shleimos they call it. Therefore, there's teddy bears that come from it. It's nicht geschleimus that there should be a Narishkeiten to come from there. It's nicht geschleimus. If the word of Ein Sof is that he's beyond definition, that he's ultimate perfection, So then, in Yonim, which have Shleimus, because he's not defined, that he's the ultimate greatest being, therefore, any quality he could have. Mitzad Atzmos is not the word of Ein Sof, is not that he's the greatest being and therefore he's undefined. You can't even say not defined either. So kein Zach nicht da. There's only him himself. There's no character. What type of thing exists? There's only him himself. Whatever he wants. If he wants stones flying, there'll be stones flying. If he wants whatever, nothing to do with Shleimus. In kann man nicht sagen as Wort in Pashtus, because that's beyond physics. What exists? Nothing exists. There's him unattached. Metzias means that something is nisgal, that something is murgish means that's a dog gewisser in you. So we're saying on one hand you say Meir Amar, but it's the Ein Sof of the Mar, the way it's begili. If it's the Ein Sof the way it is begili, so it's the Ein Sof the way it comes in a factual reality, so to speak. So what's the pshat Ein Sof? Tzedam Metzias, which is Ein Sof. What's the pshat this Metzias that's Ein Sof? There's a Metzias which in Yana is mushtet from Gdalim. In was besteht the Metzias? That the fact that he's Sof is not, he's undefined. In Yana is that his greatness is so great that he's not defined. So therefore he contains any greatness. But mitzad this darga in Yana which have Milas and Shleimusin are besunter in Yana. Der Elam versteht die Yana, sie mir ein bisschen versteht ja, you're saying. I don't know what needs more beer, what doesn't need more beer, weiß nicht. Das ist die Nekude von dem from this verse. So that's the beer that it's both in Yana. On one hand you say that it's one because the is Taka Ein Sof. But the Idach you say that it's two madrigas. Means in was besteht the mile of the that is not defined. And so every quality that the contains relates to the Ein Sof of the Means in was brings Zachares his pshittis that he contains it in himself, fashidin in Yon. And then brings Zachares and pshittis. In Atzvus you can't say that. In Atzvus you can't say that in was brings Zachares and pshittis that he contains it in himself, fashidin in Yon. Maybe da war er. Ich hoffe, es ist klar, okay, so I guess we'll start Siv Gimel the next time. Siv Gimel shein nachayin, shein already the beer of what's the pshat in the two inyanim of Ma'ilo Mata. What's the pshat in the two inyanim of Ma'ilo Mata? What's the pshat in two madrigas?